Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our session on NCAT Soil for Water project. I'm Mike Morris. I'm the project director for the project, Soil for Water project. I'm also NCAT's Southwest Regional Director. I live in Southwestern Colorado. What we're going to try to do in this session is reflect on what we've heard and learned during the conference. We're going to try to turn those words and those ideas into action, into useful action. So this session is going to be interactive, and we're going to try to put you all to work. We're not going to do all the work here. We'll also introduce you to our project, talk about how we got started, what we're trying to accomplish, share just a few lessons learned, and then actually seek your advice, because we're still learning and learning about our role. So a few housekeeping items. This is being recorded. Please use the chat function to introduce yourself. I think it'll make the session more friendly, and say who you work for, who you're representing, and maybe where you're from. Second, you may have noticed, I think you were prompted to take our polls. We have 4 polls. I would really love for all of you to take those 4. They'll take you about 5 minutes. It'll give us some interesting feedback, and we'll share that with you in a few minutes here. Remember to use the Q&A box to ask questions for any of our panelists, make a comment, or offer us advice. And we'll be watching the Q&A, and we'll try to get answers to many of those questions as we can near the end. And let's see, trying to advance the slide. Let's see, Jason, I'm not able to advance the slide. Any suggestions? Oh, there we go. All right, I want to start with a quote from E.F. Schumacher, who is one of the founders and leading thinkers of the appropriate technology movement, and really probably the person, as much as anyone, who inspired the creation of NCAT, our organization. And this was one of my favorite Schumacher quotes. He said, "An ounce of experience is worth a ton of theory." So I want us to kind of keep that thought in mind as we go through today. We're trying to be practical. We're trying to, again, turn ideas into useful action. And that's something we pride ourselves at NCAT. We're interested in action, not just words, substance, not just style, and actual changes that improve people's lives. So I hope this session will result in some useful action, and we'll be giving you several ways that you can get involved. Now, I want to start by reflecting also on what we heard at the very beginning of the conference from David Montgomery, which was a very beautiful story of personal transformation. And he told us a story partly about his own change from being a pessimist about soil to becoming an optimist. And it was partly a love story between him and his wife. And what I found really interesting in that was that David Montgomery only wrote that book about 5 years ago. So just think about that for a moment. Here's one of our leading geologists in the United States, a brilliant man, a recipient of the MacArthur Genius Award. And up until just a few years ago, he had really not fully realized this idea, this powerful idea about the importance of soil health and soil biology. So, and this had not been part of his academic training. And the way he told the story, his personal transformation really began mainly because his wife wanted a garden in the backyard. So it's kind of an accident. Now, he also told us that we're part of a revolution. And that's really the idea I want to think about with you for a few minutes here. It may seem obvious, but it was something that I really didn't understand very well when we started the Soil for Water project. And it became a really key idea in the way that we've set the whole project up. So I want to explore some of the implications of that idea, that we're in the middle of some sort of a revolution. And the very optimistic idea that David Montgomery left us with is that although this is one of our most pressing crises, it's also one of the most solvable. Now, we need to be a little bit careful, of course, in saying we're in a revolution. We don't mean we're in a violent revolution. And we also all understand that the idea of soil fertility, as Montgomery pointed out, has been around since ancient times. It's not a new idea. But when I look in the dictionary, it defines a revolution as a sudden or fundamental change in the way of thinking about or visualizing something. And the main idea I want you to understand is that in the Soil for Water project, we really see ourselves as part of that process. What we think we're doing, what we're trying to do, is to accelerate a process of fundamental change that we think is already in motion. It's already happening. Now, what is that fundamental change? Well, I would say we're talking about, within the past 20 years, a much better understanding, not just of soil fertility, but the mechanisms of soil fertility. I think we now understand that better. Why soils come back to life, how soils can come back to life. And I think, of course, we want to give NRCS a lot of credit in the process through which we're all coming to grips with this new idea. And it's I think, interesting that it's a fundamental change for the NRCS as well. And if you remember, they came out of the Dust Bowl in our country, and they were the organization that was set up to protect soil. So we had this idea that we could very easily lose our soil. Soil was fragile, soil is precious. And what NRCS is now telling us is that's all true. Erosion is still a huge problem, and soil really is precious and it is fragile, but we can also build it, and we can build it quite quickly. So we're not just protecting something that's breakable anymore. I want to give you just one other clue about, or at least it was a clue for me, about this soil health revolution. This one comes from Sandra Postel, who is, many of you know, is probably the most famous expert in America on water conservation. And she's really a world expert on water conservation. I was reading her book, Replenish, and I was really struck by this passage where she described hearing Gabe Brown speak, the North Dakota farmer who's become a hero to so many of us. And it was 10 years ago in the year 2012. And I'll read her quote a little bit more fully. She said, "I realized how blinkered I had been about agricultural water use, despite having written on the topic for many, many, many years. I had researched how to get more crop per drop through efficiency and judicious irrigation. What I had neglected, though, was the importance of repairing the soil reservoir itself, the living matrix that holds water in its pores and absorbs it like a sponge." So just let that sink in for a minute. The idea that probably seems sort of obvious to all of us, it's the topic of this conference, had really not occurred, or not fully occurred, to one of the world's leading water conservation experts just 10 years ago. Now, seeing yourself as part of a revolution, I think helps you. It certainly helped us understand why people don't always understand what we're talking about, even when we're saying things that seem fairly obvious. In the case of our project, we started during the drought in Texas, which ran from about 2011 to 2014. It was a terrible time. And we were slightly shocked that no one was talking about soil. So that became our big idea. We thought that soil should be part of our discussion about how to cope with the drought. And we spoke to many people about that. And our idea was, why shouldn't we try to catch more water in our soil? So the mission of our project began, and it's always been the same, is simply to catch and hold more water in the soil, however and wherever we possibly can. Now, farmers and ranchers, I think, really understood us immediately, latched on immediately. But many, many other people had trouble grasping what we were talking about. And I remember driving with some friends up to Austin in Texas, and we gave testimony to the Natural Resources Committee of our state legislature. And we just asked them to try to support some basic soil health education and try to help landowners take advantage of whatever they could do. And they weren't, they weren't hostile to us. They were friendly. They were kind of polite, but they also looked at us a little funny, like they didn't really quite get what we were saying. They didn't, they just weren't ready to, I guess, really ready to hear what we were saying. And I do want to say that last year, the Texas legislature did finally pass a state soil health program. So it took 5 years or more, but things do change. And one thing I guess we can all be happy about is sometimes it's worth saying things, even when people look at you a little funny. Things will sink in eventually, and when they're surrounded by other people telling them similar things. I think it's important too to remember that we're telling people about some things that they've always heard are impossible. So at this conference, we've heard from Jimmy Emmons in Oklahoma saying that the NRCS has changed the classification of some of his soils. Well, I mean, if you look at soil textbooks, they're going to tell you that's impossible. We also heard Mr. Emmons say he's increased his infiltration rates from less than 1 inch per hour to probably around 6 inches per hour, maybe more. We also heard Texas farmer Chris Grodiget say that he is now stabilizing and even increasing his well levels, and he is drawing water from the Ogallala Aquifer. Well, most of us have heard for most of our lives that that's impossible. And we've always been told that the draining of the Ogallala Aquifer is inevitable. There's nothing we can do about it, that situation is hopeless. At this conference, we heard, maybe for the first time ever, a serious conversation among federal agencies about using soil health as a flood control measure. And that's an amazing thing. And who would have even predicted that 5 years ago? And then finally this morning, Alejandro Carrillo, who's with us this morning, showed us that he's been able to grow lush grasses in the Chihuahuan Desert. And within just about 15 years, he has tripled his capacity to raise cattle. Well, that's supposed to be impossible too, and he's been doing that. I mean, if people here have always heard the world is flat and you tell them the world is round, it's going to take them a while to understand that and to agree with you. And I think it's perfectly understandable. So when we created the Soil for Water project, we made a conscious choice to meet people on their own terms. We decided to encourage curiosity, and we were not going to beat people over the head with mountains of scientific data. I'll say just a little bit more about our project and how we try to design it to accelerate processes of revolutionary change that we see as inevitable, but they're moving too slowly. So first is we chose to focus on the water cycling aspect of healthy soil. And we did this for some kind of obvious reasons. First, it's a very powerful way of, soil health is a powerful, low-cost method of conserving water. It's, as we've all heard in this conference now, a powerful way to reduce the effects of drought and at least potentially flooding. And very important to us is water is something that every landowner cares about. So there's literally no downside to catching and holding water in your soil. It's far more accessible to talk about water than it is to come in and talk about, I don't know, biodiversity or sequestering carbon or mycorrhizal fungi or something like that. So water is something everybody knows and understands and generally wants. Second thing we decided to do is encourage people to experiment and see changes with their own eyes. So we ran about 15 pilot projects in Texas where we encouraged people to try some sort of experiment. We helped them measure their success. So we stuck with them. We committed to 6 years or more. And I would say most of these producers have now seen at least some sort of an observable improvement. We also decided to commit wholeheartedly to peer-to-peer learning. And we set up something called the Soil for Water Network. We believe farmers learn best from farmers. And I guess going back to Schumacher, we really do believe an ounce of experience is worth a ton of theory. So if we can get farmers to talk to each other, that's really a good way to accelerate the process of change. It's open to any commercial producer in the United States. And if you are a producer, we really hope you'll go to our website, soilforwater.org, and join the network. It's free, it's confidential. You'll meet other innovative producers, and we'll invite you to some members only events, and we have some nice discounts for you on soil testing and other things. The fourth thing we did is to set up the Soil for Water Forum, where all of you, whether you're a producer or not, are welcome to come and have conversations about soil and water. We hope it'll be a continuation of the dialogue we're having in this conference. Finally, we committed fully to the power of stories. We've set up something on our website called the Regenerators Atlas of America. And each of those dots you see on the map is a story. We just launched this less than a month ago. It's beginning to fill up with dots. And we'd love to have you to go to our website if you're a producer, join, plant your flag on the map, and tell us a little about what you've been doing. It's highly searchable, and I tried to show you that on this screenshot. So you can show precip zones, USDA plant hardiness zones, ecoregions, or watershed boundaries, and you can search it by a whole variety of different ways. We think it's going to turn into a pretty nice research tool as it begins to fill up, and it'll be a way to find these powerful stories that are really coming up all around us. Two things we're not trying to do in our project. We're not trying to collect large or standardized amounts of data. Pretty much everything we do is quite confidential. We respect the privacy that is important to so many producers. We're also not really involved in advocacy work, political work. That work's important. We leave that to other groups. And I will say a word about collaboration. We are very committed to collaboration. We realize we're not alone. There are many, many other groups doing related work. They're all important. They share our mission. And we learned at this conference that I think a little over 3% of all agricultural land in our country is in cover crops. I think that comes from the US Census of Agriculture. And if only 3% of our land is in cover crops, then it's absolutely ridiculous for us to be competing, because we need all the help we can get, and we all need to work together. And we honestly still have a long way to go. Okay, finally, I'm just going to let slides run for a little while here, but I did want you to know that we offer technical assistance and training. I'll just show you some pictures from our project, some of the folks we've been working with. We're very fortunate to draw on the full resources of NCAT's ATTRA project. If you're not familiar with it, I would really hope you check it out. attra.ncat.org, ATTRA, A-T-T-R-A. Or if you just go to the NCAT website or the Soil for Water website, you'll find it. We were fortunate to draw on the full resources of that program. You can get one-on-one help with almost anything you're trying to do related to soil health or catching water in your soil. Please call us, email us, someone will get back to you. And we frequently offer our own workshops, webinars, and pasture walks. Okay, final thing is we do have a great team, and in just a sec here, I'll introduce you to all of them. 4 of them have graciously agreed to join us for the discussion that's about to follow. And they are Felicia Bell in Mississippi, Linda Coffey in Arkansas, Linda Poole in Montana, and Lee Reinhardt in Pennsylvania. I do want to thank our funders, and they're shown here on this screen. The Meadows Foundation and the Dixon Water Foundation both helped us at the very beginning. We've also recently been funded by the NRCS, by Southern SARE, and the Jacob and Therese Hershey Foundation, pardon me. Thank you all. They've allowed us to expand into a national program, and we're so grateful to them. With that, I did want to at least show you pictures of some of our great staff members around the country. Again, you'll be hearing from 4 of them right now. And with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Linda Poole, and this will turn into, I hope, a conversation, and Linda will be leading that discussion. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mike. What we'll do first is I'll have a quick review of what's going on in the polls. You guys you've doubled or tripled the number of responses in the polls in the time that Mike was talking. So I hope that doesn't mean that you missed the good information that he shared, but it'll all be recorded. You can watch it later. So let's start with the first poll, which is, who are you? And we have 102 answers in there right now. And it looks like leading the pack are governmental agency people at 28%, NGOs, 19%, ag service providers, 10%, farmers, 15%, ranchers, 8%, and let's see, educators, students, I can't do the math, but and general public, it looks like we're all together about under 20%. So we are so happy to see the diversity of people who are here. Let's go to the second poll, which is, where are you in your personal journey to learn about soil health? And I love this. So we've got 77 answers in here. 17% of us are beginners who are still learning the basics. I think this is interesting. There is nobody in our meeting today who identified themselves as cautious or skeptical. Interested, but much of this still sounds too good to be true. So it seems to me like we might have believers who are here with us. 8% of people list themselves as curious or intrigued, and 40%, which is the leading number, are active and committed, already working to restore some soil. And then 35% of us consider ourselves to be evangelists, making a professional or personal priority to do this work and to recruit others. So that's all good news. The next poll was about regenerative methods that we are most interested in learning about. We have 72 answers in there, and I am pleased to say that improved grazing management is number one at 19%, and an additional 8% are interested in incorporating livestock into their cropping systems. We've had a recent run on the poll. There was nobody in this category before, and now we're up to 21% of people who are interested in water capture and conservation and soil moisture monitoring. So to me, that's exciting. I hope that some of the presentations we've had in the last 2 days have given you ideas about how to do that. In terms of farming systems, reduced tillage or no-till, 11%, land forming, berms, swales, 3%, cover crops, 10%, compost, mulches, biostimulants, and biochar, 14% together. And 14% of people are interested in agroforestry and silvopasture. So that's exciting too. And one of the questions that we really wanted to hear about, and we're going to go on and talk more about as we go through this session, is how do you plan on participating in the Soil for Water project? You know, what do you see as roles that our project could play in your life, in the success of the work that you're trying to do on your farm or with your agency or NGO? So we have 64 answers in this section, and it looks like the leader of the pack at 56% is workshops, field days, webinars, and other educational events. Oh, we've got people voting right while I'm talking, changing my numbers. We'll just go with what I see at the time. So these numbers won't add up. We have 34% of people saying that they want to explore partnerships between Soil for Water and your own organization and project. And thank you for saying that. That is so important to us. We feel that success is going to be built around respectful, reciprocal relationships. So this is great news for us. 33% of you are not quite sure yet. So we would love to hear from you more. Contact us directly, and let's see if there's ways that we can be of service to the work that you're doing in the regenerative movement. 21% of people intend to talk with us at the Soil for Water Forum. Would love to see you there. The Soil for Water Network is open to producers only, and 12% of people are planning on doing that. 7% of people are interested in planting their flag and telling their story on the Regenerators Atlas of America. And I have to tell you that that it is really easy to get a flag up on that map, and it is like free advertising and a free way to find your people. What we've heard over and over in this conversation and in other regenerative conversations is, as you are a person taking on a new approach to farming and ranching, sometimes you feel like a bit of an outsider in your very own community. Your community is on there, on that Soil for Water Atlas, and we'd love to see you there. So, Mike, that's what we have for the polls. Thank you to everybody who did that. At this point, I'd like to invite back Alejandro Carrillo, who was our keynote speaker this morning, and our much esteemed and new advisor to the Soil for Water project. And Alejandro, I wonder if you'd like to talk with us a little bit about how do you see this project fitting into what's important about reversing desertification through regenerative work. So I hope you can unmute and share with us now.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for the opportunity again. Actually, I was looking at the Soil for Water and the catch and hold goal that we have for the rainfall and for even irrigation and any water that may fall into the ground. And we understand that everything has to be coming from the ground up, feeding the microbiology. So that microbiology is going to help us build aggregates and have a soil with some air on it so we can infiltrate more water. We actually know that the rainfall that we get, well, we're only capturing about 30%. I don't know if you had data on that, but locally we're only catching. So when we get, like, let's say a 2-inch rain, we're actually getting just half of the rain, half an inch effectively. So we're far, I mean, on top of that, and not all of you were on my presentation, but the last 40 years, the trend is going downwards, at least on more brittle, arid environments in northern Mexico and the western US. So on top of that, if we're not actually catching the little rain that we're getting, then we're creating our own droughts. Now, worth to mention that after my presentation, I got a text message from my rain alarm saying that it was raining at the ranch. It's not supposed to rain right now at the ranch, and on the vast Chihuahuan desert, actually the ranch was the one getting more rain, and that rain was like a long stream going from my ranch all the way through West Texas. So we do believe that in order for us to regenerate the land, one of the most important things is to fix the water cycle. And the first thing is actually to infiltrate the water. And to do that, then we have to build that bigger solar panel from the vegetation that we have, from the grasses. And as you may remember, the way you graze will actually change improve that solar panel by growing more leaves instead of, I mean, the ratio between leaves and stems will change drastically. So you will have a more leafy structure of your grasses, even though the grasses may be the same thing. And the other goal, obviously, is to extend the green season so we can actually feed the microbiology or what we call the microherd longer. And that way we will be able to catch and retain, because the microaggregates also do retain some moisture for the plants to be released later on. So for me, that's the foundation, is actually for us to focus on the soil, from the soil up, and then we can actually change all this trend that is not in our favor right now.
This is all such good news, and I'm reflecting on the sessions I got to go to. I kind of don't like the concurrent sessions because I know I missed really good things from other people, but I'm hearing some recurring themes. And one is that farming in nature's image and farming in harmony with nature is one of the best ways that we can boost our profitability, reduce our risk, be able to handle drought, and be a benefit to the people around us by not exporting our floods and external inputs onto their property. So I think that that's one thing that I heard, and I heard it loud and clear in what you were talking about, Alejandro. I like what you said about we're creating our own droughts. And right at the end of our session earlier this morning, I just loved your concluding remarks about what this means. Yes, we can create our own droughts, but we can also create hope. And I wondered if you could just touch on that again for the people who weren't there the first time. And even us who were there the first time, I need to hear it again. I can't hear this enough.
Yeah, actually, we're here. Obviously, we had to experience what we call greening the desert or stopping the desertification. But for us, our main message is not really techniques or how-tos, but also a message of hope. Because you may be aware of that there was a recent poll internationally where they were asking young people about their hope for the future, and the majority said that they have no hope for the future. So we really need to get this message across, not only across farmers and ranchers, but also across the general public, because we all are going to be benefited by working our soils, by improving the soil fertility. From the nutrient-dense food, lower all our inputs, make ranchers more profitable, rebuilding communities. And let me share with you a story. I remember I was very lucky to start my journey in the state of Chihuahua, because I met a very long time holistic management practitioners. So they were my mentors. So they went to visit my ranch. One of them, his name is Jesus Almeida. And he said, Alex, this is gonna be great. I mean, it was just a terrible shape. But I mean, they're used to see, as we are now, see bare ground and thinking about the potential. We always think about the potential. We never think about the problems. So when he was at the ranch, he said, Alex, you thought about make your ranch profitable, and I know you love wildlife and so on, but you haven't thought about something very important. And I say, well, what is it? Your dad is 70 something. This will give more years of life to your dad. So that's really, I mean, hoping to get a better future. I mean, and my dad right now is almost 90, and he's like a little kid when he goes. So it goes really beyond, as I am mentioning, techniques or how-tos, but it's part of, I would say, our spirituality to see this beautiful. I think we were created to see beautiful things, not to see all this bare ground and all this weather that is killing us, extremes. I think we were created to be in a pleasant place and in a beautiful views. I mean, I feel that we are more artistic than anything else, and we're painting a beautiful picture of our ranches. So at the end of the day, our ranches is a reflection of us, and we have to recognize that, and that probably will motivate us to take action.
Yeah, I saw in, I think it was the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies has a video on your, I'm going to say it wrong again, Pastio Culturas de Desierto. Anyway, on your website there. And you're quoted in, or you're saying in there, look in the mirror. This is the person who is responsible. And if we can't look at that ourselves and say that, yes, we are responsible. This actually goes back to something I just heard Enrique Salmon say in the Indigenous section about the relationship that Native Americans have is more one of responsibility than it is of rights. And I'm hearing you say that it's a lot about art and maybe less about science, but not, I mean, we're not rejecting science and we're not rejecting these other parts, but the idea that the way forward is going to be through engaging our whole bodies, our whole communities, our whole idea of how to do this. And hope, there's that saying, hope is a thing with wings. In my mind, when I hear that, it's like, that means it could fly away. And it could, if you didn't have a plan, if you didn't have a community, if you didn't have people who you could look to and learn from, learn with. And that's what Soil for Water is about. So I think that what we could do now is I'd like to hear from the other NCAT staff people. Maybe Felicia, if you would like to go next and tell us about what does this idea of Soil for Water and the work that we're talking about today, what does this mean for your community? How could we maybe be of service to the things and the people that you work with?
Yes, so thank you so much, Linda. Soil for Water, really, this project is going to help our Mississippi farmers. Our issue and challenges and some of our unmet needs is erosion. And then on the other side is compaction. And so it is management. At the end of the day, is farmer management. And I feel like Soil for Water will assist us because it'll be peer-to-peer, farmers able to talk with one another, get ideas. And also, I always like to say, like the tricks of the trade, where it's not in a book, but it's a long term or generational idea and understanding of how to work with land. And those are the things that can be, shared among our peers, among our farmers, our neighbors. And now we can build our soils, our lands, better water, infiltration. We could do it together. So we're not in our silos and feeling like we're out here by ourselves and trying to figure this out. So it's gonna, this project is just tremendous. I love it. We definitely want to engage more young people and young adults. Because I have learned definitely in the last 2 years, we have so many young adults that are buying land, but of course they don't have the skill set of farming, but they know that it's important to buy land. So now, this project, as well as our ag specialists as a whole, we have to be at the forefront, one of many organizations that can help them understand the skills they need to learn, but then don't get caught up in the trap that a lot of our parents, grandparents, and even ourselves have got caught up into how our soils are today. We could teach them right from the beginning, this is what you need to do to manage your soil, manage your land, your water, your natural resources, where you don't have this issue 60 years later and you're passing your land to your grandchildren, but you're giving them something that they got to try to rebuild. And so Soil for Water is a great project. I'm glad to be a part of it. And the people in the South that's on this call, please reach out to me. And also, if you have family and friends that's in the Southeast region and so forth, please reach out to us in the Gulf States office to assist your family members with any of that new land they have acquired or so forth, or then land or family land that basically may have sat fallow for several years. We definitely can assist you with many other entities in the state to help you put it back into production. Thank you so much, Linda.
Actually, I'd love to hear just a little more from you, Felicia, about, Alejandro and I, we spend so much time thinking about drought because we're in the West. And I know that you have both drought and flood when you're there. And so does that change your perspective, or is there something that you can share around that the rest of us can learn from?
So within, and only speaking about the state of Mississippi, we do have drought, but we don't always have it every season. And that's like most people. And so most people around the country. And so it's really learning what you need to do, but you cannot do these type of practices when it is upon you. So that's what I feel like we as specialists, other ag professionals from other entities, we got to assist you with learning the tools, learning the management, learning those skill sets. So if you have a drought, you can pivot. And so that's what we have done over the years here, Linda, is just learning how to do that. One of the things that we try to share with our farmers is always having a plan B. So most of you all know that we're known to have hurricanes. We have tornadoes. And so most of our farmers don't have plan B. Where are you going to put these animals if your land becomes 3-6 feet underwater? If it gets even higher than that, where do you take your animals? And most of our farmers have not done that type of planning and so forth. So one, taking the animals to make sure you have a herd after this traumatic ordeal of our weather, but then coming back with the soil and how do you work with the silt that's been brought from those waters and so forth. But you cannot do it when it's happening to you because you're stressed. And so those are the types of things I feel like Soil for Water, as well as NCAT and many other entities, USDA entities, as well as our extension offices around the country, they can help the farmers understand the tools and the strategies before they have the hardships of those traumatic ordeals. Yeah.
Yeah, and for our listeners, if you're not familiar, Felicia has a wonderful set of webinars and videos on the ATRA website, conversations with farmers on the ground, talking about how they approach things. I think one of the things that is so that I like about this community, this regenerative community, is everybody who's really engaged in it. We're both learners and we're teachers. And we're like hyphae. We're like the hyphae of mycorrhizal fungi. We're like, let's share resources. Let's run that resource out as far as we can to the side so that people can get to it and make good use of it. Felicia, I also know that with the Southern SARE grant that you are working with some universities there. And can you tell us just a little bit about that project, please?
Yes, so I always call it like A to Z because we want to work with farmers that are those new and beginning farmers, but also experienced farmers, landowners that may be in a position that they may need to pivot, revamp their business idea. So the Southern SARE project is basically training you to go from seed to table, but you understanding that supply chain. We have so many farmers that don't understand every portion of it. And as a business owner, even though it may be not your wheelhouse, but you really need to learn it to know at least a basic that you could get through that with individuals that you're talking to. And so again, a very, very good project that I love sharing with our farmers because it's sharing wholesale markets, but on various levels. We have a buyers panel where we're inviting different people from their local area that could talk to them on how they can get their food and produce as well as meat into it. But one of the things I love about the project is we're not just honing in on like a Walmart, Kroger's, those type of places as thinking that's where you could place your food. We got to think about the mid level, and that's your mom and pop grocery stores in your local area. Wholesale markets, like if you create a value added product and where that product could be sold at. And so really giving farmers a vast amount of opportunities to sell their produce and meat. That's really what the project is about. Thanks. And thank you for letting me share that. It is a great, great project, and hopefully we could do more in the coming years.
Yeah, and I saw that in the chat, Linda shared your contact information, which is great. I am so impressed with the work that you're doing. I just wish I could get down there and see it in person. It's really exciting to hear about. And not too far from Felicia is Linda Coffey in Arkansas. And Linda, I wonder if you would be willing to talk with us about what you see as some unmet needs in your communities or roles for soil for water in the work that you do.
Thank you, Linda, and thanks, Felicia. I love hearing about your work in Jackson and Mississippi as well. In Arkansas, the thing that I am really excited about the most, I think, is the collaboration with so many people who have been practicing and teaching great grazing management for years. But now we can get a critical mass. We can get that community aspect going more. We've drawn together a core group of people that includes Cooperative Extension, NRCS, a grazing group in Northwest Arkansas, the water districts, you know, like Illinois River Watershed Project and Beaver Watershed, and others that have a very big interest in water from the aspect of quality as well as quantity. When we gather everybody together who really all have the same goals, we can just get so much more done. I'm a big believer in teamwork, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to work with a great team in Arkansas. We have talked with each other. We have done some work just to get ourselves started, and we've identified that field days are really one thing that we want to do more of. I've had people say to me, there's only so much you can read. And there's something about being on a piece of land, feeling it under your feet, seeing it, hearing the birds. I love what Alejandro said about being made to see beauty and to experience what somebody has done by doing great grazing management. It's inspiring. It is beautiful. I see many more flowers, more plant diversity, more species of birds. I hear them, I see them, and we can talk with each other and share those. As Felicia was saying, we have some knowledge that we can pass on and need to pass on and need to encourage each other. That community aspect is really important. And I'm hopeful that we can get more grazing groups established all over the state. I think that's hugely helpful for landowners to get that support right there in their community. And so I'm just delighted to have the chance to work on this project. My part of the project is funded by Southern SARE, and I'm super grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the team who I've reached out to who've just said, yes, count me in. Yes, I will help. And I think that says a lot for the people, the professionals who've been doing this, who see so clearly the need to improve the way we manage land, and they're anxious to step up and work together. So.
Yeah, I think one thing that people might not realize, maybe it's the case with a lot of different technical assistance folks, but a lot of us farm and ranch on our own. And Linda has sheep and had goats or have goats. Are you a past or present goat?
Had goats for 20 years, still kind of sad about not having goats. But, you know, and that's true, Linda, excellent point. That's true of many of the professionals that I've pulled in on this team. Many of them raise cattle or raise goats. And so they're bringing that farmer vision and perspective to their work. And I think that's really great.
Yeah, it's a huge help, and it's not a soil for water program directly, but can you tell us a little bit about your women, livestock, and the land thing that you're doing, just as an example of the type of work that we can do through partnerships and in communities to help people embrace regenerative agriculture?
Thank you. I'm super excited about this project. It is also funded by Southern SARE. It's the reason I missed some of the program today, because we are meeting. We have two cohorts, one that's going to do an in-person training in Arkansas and one that's going to do a training in Tennessee. They come from all over the Southeast, the women do. That whole aspect of community and being able to share and being able to talk with each other, I can see them getting support from each other. We have really just started. This was only the second lesson today, and we've had a Monday night lesson. So we're meeting online every 2 weeks, and every Monday for the whole group. So this is so confusing how I put this. I'm so sorry. I have a lesson and then I repeat it the next week. And then I go back to the first state with a different lesson and repeat it. And we have online resources, which we are going to duplicate and offer to the public as soon as we're finished with this class. And I see the women talking with each other, contacting each other. They're letting us know what they need, which is so valuable. If people who are managing land let us know what they need and what would be helpful, we will do our very best to be responsive to it. And so I hope that the forum is a place people will go to let us know what they need and let us respond. So we are going to have an in-person training in June and then some follow-ups, and encouraging all of these women to start little groups in their communities for further support and social support. And this is for women who are beginning livestock enterprises on pasture. So the same people who are interested in soil for water, just a little bit different focus group. So.
Yeah, I love hearing about that, and the idea that good ideas crop up time and time again in different places. Here in the Western US, the Western Landowners Alliance, really wonderful group, has a women in ranching program, and it's helped a lot of people, a lot of women realize, find their voice and find their footing, and be able to add to the work that we're doing together, because it's about inclusion and it's about full stories and supporting one another. So I really love that. Makes me happy just to think about you on Monday nights, Linda, doing this work. Yeah, in terms of flood and drought and water quality and the types of things that really we've been talking about in this conference, do you see any really important directions to go with that in your Arkansas communities? Are all the needs being met, or do you feel like there are some things that we could be doing a little bit better if we could partner up?
Well, it's a great question. I feel like we all recognize slow adoption, or not as many people adopting these methods as we'd like to see. And one of our issues for the people that I work with is time. Most of us in Arkansas are going to be having an off-farm job. Yeah. So that means that our daylight hours are precious, and just learning some ways that we can manage so that we can set up fences on the weekend and be able to, move our flocks and herds in an appropriate way with what little time we have in the day. These are important things, and this is where talking with each other can help. I'm not as familiar with the cropping end of it. There are people in Arkansas working hard on that, on the Soil Health Alliance, and Adam Chappell is one of them. So I can't really speak to that. Those guys know that end of it. But the grazing side, I know from the grazing conferences we have, I'm a board member for the Arkansas Grazing Lands Coalition. And I know that another thing we would like to see is what Ms. Felicia described. We want more young people coming in. And so I'm very inspired and empowered and pleased when I see younger people coming to the grazing conferences and soaking it up and learning. That makes me super happy. So I would like to see more younger people at the table. I'd like to see us have a little more understanding of the hindrances to adoption and then ways to help with that. And we're going to be collecting that information at the field days that we host and through some surveys in our state. Excellent.
Yeah, well, I heard you talk about the limitation being time, and I wonder, Alejandro, if you're still on there. We think about what holds us back, and you encouraged us to focus on the potential, not on the problem. And here I am saying, if the problem is money, or if the problem is time, how does that fit in with making a transition to more regenerative practices? does it take more time? Does it take a lot more money and maybe only for a period of time? What can you tell us about that?
Yes, Linda. I do remember at a time where we started practicing this approach, and the folks that were before me, they put up, well, in the state of Chihuahua, they put up workshops, classes, and you have to pay people to go there. I mean, and then what is the reason for that? Because 30 years ago, we still had some biomass. I mean, we still were a little bit greedy into what we have. So that was really not driving the change. Unfortunately, most of us do make a change when we're almost on the edge, saying, oh my God. So nowadays, I think we're on the perfect timing, even though we may have degraded more the land because we didn't do much the last 30 years. But that's the perfect timing for young people. I see a lot of excitement in young people with these new regenerative practices that we did not have before. So it was really hard to get even 50 people on a classroom, even paying the food and paying for to come and so on. Nowadays, just for you, and it will not be different in any other place, but if we put up 3 or 4 workshops or seminars in Chihuahua, we could get 2,000 or 3,000 people, not only from the state, but from other states in Mexico, from the US, from South America. So it's exciting. And then a lot of young, educated people. Because let's be honest here. I mean, there was a time where you were at the farm and, oh, the smart guys had to go to the city and then just leave whatever is left at the ranch. Well, now we have to change that because we need the smart guys to work on the farm. Because now this is a different ballpark and different challenges. But I think the opportunities are there for younger people and not so young people. And well, we are excited really of what's going on now. I think we're the right time, wherever you go. I think everything is in place to be successful right now.
I just love hearing that. I could see on Linda Coffey's face that she did too. Yeah, so we have one more team member that we haven't introduced yet, and that's Lee Reinhardt, who's in Pennsylvania. He grew up in Texas, so he and Alejandro have something in common, being Southwesterners. Although somebody told me that Texas isn't Southern and it isn't Southwest, it's just Texas. So I don't quite get it. I'm from Montana. But anyway, Lee, do you want to reflect on the role of soil for water regenerative practices in your communities that you work in? And I know you've worked all over the place, here in Montana included. So broader reflections from you, perhaps, Lee.
Thank you, Linda. And that's kind of what I like to do is reflect on, the various places that I've been. I've been able to either ranch or serve as an ag educator in several different regions of the United States, and from ranching in Texas and being a cooperative extension educator down on the Gulf Coast to being a cooperative extension educator up in Montana, and then now with NCAT over in Pennsylvania serving the Northeast region, I've seen that drought is almost relative. It hits some communities harder than others, especially out west where you don't have much to begin with. But where I am here in Northeast Pennsylvania, and this pretty much describes most of this region moving from like Virginia up to Maine, is we're in about a 45 or 50 inch rainfall zone, right? And that sounds awesome to somebody in Malta, Montana, right? It sounds awesome to somebody in the hill country, right? Where they might be getting 20 inches, 25 inches a year, but we have issues, much like Felicia said, with compaction and with erosion. But what I really see as an issue are two things, and that is water contamination from livestock and from yards, suburban yards, and things like that, running down the Susquehanna into the Chesapeake Bay. There's an awful lot of watersheds here that feed out into the bay and into the ocean, and that's an issue that a lot of groups are addressing here, and they're addressing it very well. And Soil for Water, I've been since we've started the project, I've had lots of conversations with farmers and with organizational partners in Extension and NRCS and nonprofit conservation districts, grassland councils, stuff like that, right? And they all have said, wow, really, Soil for Water? That sounds like exactly like something that we would like to partner with, because that's their wheelhouse, and they're trying to figure out how they can keep the nutrient loads out of our waterways. That's one issue. Another one is we have wet summers and we have dry summers. Right now, a dry summer may mean that we don't get rain for 3 weeks, or any significant rain for 4 months. Well, keep in mind that we've got highly productive cool season perennial grasses and forbs and things grown in our pastures. And whenever the water shuts down in August, they stop growing. And it impacts these grazers and hay producers and such, because they have to change plans and alter really quickly, where they're used to having rotations and such, where they can run cattle or sheep, and they're moving them every day or two or whatever. Now they have to. Some of them are feeding hay in August, right? If they haven't, paid careful attention to all of these regenerative practices that we've been talking about for the past couple of days, right? So holding water in the soil. So although the eastern seaboard is very different from the semi-arid West, and certainly different than Alejandro's ranch down in northern Mexico, since it is so different, our idea is how do we keep that water that we get in the soil so that it, number one, doesn't flow into the rivers and the streams, and number two, so that whenever we do have those periodic summer slumps where productivity just seriously decreases, how can we keep those pastures and paddocks green so that that we still have nutritious feed to offer our animals? And we may have to slow our rotation down a little bit, but we can keep going. We can keep grazing, and we don't have to really destock, right? That's what I see happening on the eastern seaboard with Soil for Water. And we're looking at partners to develop new projects and such here in Pennsylvania and in New Hampshire and other places north. We also have a Soil for Water program that just started in Virginia with Virginia Tech and with Virginia Association for Biological Farming. And they're coming together and developing their work group with funding from Southern SARE to do a 3-year project on basically how do we encourage the adoption of regenerative practices within Virginia to benefit producers in the soil and the land in the watersheds. There's over 10 watersheds, I think, in Virginia that can impact the bay and the ocean. And when I say that's all of our pelagic fish, a lot of them start out right as fingerlings in these salt marshes and in these estuaries and such, and we overload those with nutrients. It has a devastating effect, right? So really looking forward to working with the Virginia folks to see what we can come up with educational programs to really pull together some serious peer-to-peer learning with these producers who are doing good things to see if we can increase adoption, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of my perspective, I think, on what's going on here and how the Soil for Water project can benefit this rain-fed community, right? And these rain-fed ecologies. So
Yeah, so Lee, you were monitoring the Q&A box for us. Have you seen any questions come in that someone might want to ask one of the speakers here?
well, I got a couple of comments here more than anything. You know, one of them came up whenever, I believe maybe it was whenever Felicia was talking about, you know, not enough farmer mentors out there, right? And I know that we got a lot of agency and educational people online with us right now, you know, and certainly, you know, put your thoughts in the chat if you'd like. But, you know, basically what she's saying is that her uncle was a university extension agent, right? And used to be out with the farmers' fields all the time. But now it's, you know, agents seem to be in the office all the time now. Well, I can speak to that because I've been working with county agents for a long time, and I was one in 2 states. And the extension system is different than it was whenever I was back in the 90s. Is that what it was? And in the early 2000s, a lot of the extension services, the county agent has gone to a regional position in some of these states, and they're stretched and they've got a lot more responsibilities. That's something that I see happening, but you know, how can we increase the mentors that are out there? And I think the Soil for Water program is one way to do that, with partnering with organizations, because remember what Linda said is this is all about peer-to-peer learning, and Mike really you know, kind of stressed that at the beginning of the talk too. Farmers learn best from farmers, and that's why we have the forum, which honestly, to me, is the most amazing thing about this Soil for Water. I mean, just if you haven't seen the forum, go on, log into it. It's really easy. There's questions, there's comments. You can post your pictures. You can share what's going on. Look at various topics that come up. And if you have something to add, you know, this is the way that we share our knowledge, you know, and the way that we can develop a network of folks to increase adoption, you know, of these good regenerative practices. So yeah, mentors. I think one of the way we can get a lot of mentors out there is just by partnering with organizations and farmers, working with American Farmland Trust down in Virginia with our Soil for Water project. And Jacob Gilly down there he's a rancher as well as a specialist with American Farmland Trust, going out on farms, just helping folks. And he's a part of our Soil for Water project. And we bring that capacity in so that we can do better work, right? And so that's what I think we can do. Another question. Oh, here's a question that came in wondering, and I think this is a general question about the whole conference. Wonder if anyone has talked about earthworks to catch water on individual farms, either by spreading water across landscapes on contour, small clay dams or swales. And I know that I believe that that Enrique Salmon had mentioned something about that in his talk. Do you have anything to say about that, Linda?
Well, certainly he had some wonderful pictures of what's been done for a very long time in his native community. And then I think about too, another group we partner with and really love is the Kavira Coalition, who has Bill Zedike, who's been right at the forefront about thinking about very low tech doable solutions with hands with hands and with rocks and with sticks that you can put on the land. And in the Soil for Water kind of like toolbox, we'll be bringing forward presentations, you know, as we've had Alejandro and all these other wonderful speakers here during this. We also do webinars and workshop series. We had one with Dee Dee Pursehouse on restoring the soil sponge. She talked a little bit about that, and it's something that's of great interest. One of my local heroes here are Dale and Janet Veseth, who've done beaver dam analogs out on their land, and it looks kind of sad right now when it hasn't really rained since June of 2020. So there's these little structures out there waiting for water, but they will be there when the water sometimes comes. So,
Mhm.
and I think we have a lot to learn from permaculture design. I've got a bunch of books. That's what I do in my spare time, as I'm trying to learn more about land forming to go along with soil forming. You know, to me, the
Mhm.
first thing is what can I do without having to move any equipment or pay for anything? And then the next thing is what can I do with my hands? And then I only get to what do I have to hire a tractor to do? So it's of interest to us, and anybody who is interested, we would love to hear from you and do more about this topic. Linda, Felicia, I don't know if you're still on there. Mike, anybody have any examples, or are you working on these projects? Yeah, it's
So
we spend so
in
much time working on the soil itself.
in the questions, Bill Taylor says, for the earthworks question, Mark Shepard's book Water for Any Farm is a great resource, along with Brad Lancaster out of Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, I love Brad. Talk about an power-packed presenter on how you can catch and hold water. Another resource that we really like is Dale Strickler's book on the drought resilient farm, which is to remind people, stay on, don't quit before the end here, because that is one of our door prizes, is Dale Strickler's book. And what I love about that is it's like this compendium of here's what you can do with grazing, and here's what you can do with cover crops, and here's what you can do with land forming, and it's really comprehensive. So I'm
So
pretty.
there's one more question, Linda, and I'll let you answer this now, or if you think it's best to bring this into like the closing statements, but a good question. What is the process for partnering with the organization Soil for Water? Okay, so you could talk for 10 minutes about that, or 2 minutes, or if you want to bring that, if that's what we're going to talk about at the end of the session, I'll let you judge how to handle that one.
Yeah, well, this one's really easy. And, you know, it's Mike who makes those decisions as our program leader. But to me, this is about building relationships, and it starts with a phone call, and it starts with an email. And just get in touch with us and tell us what your unmet need is, or your unexploited opportunity. You know, what do you see where we might work together? And that's the process. You know, it's we do not have a 6-page application. You just get a hold of one of us and tell us what you've got going, and we will do what we can. Anything that can help catch and hold more water in the soil through regenerative, respectful relationships, that's what we want to be about. So Mike, did you want to answer that question?
I think you pretty well nailed it, Linda. We'd like to know what other groups are working on. We'd like to know what their needs are. And just get to know. There's so many good groups we see as friends and allies, but there's no one formula. There's no recipe there, and there are any number of ways we could work together. We have good ways of distributing information. You know, we're essentially an educational organization. Sometimes we can help you get the word out. And certainly if you're putting on events, we're happy to publicize those and promote those. So really just reach out to us, and let's set a time, set up a Zoom call, and kind of get to know each other.
That's great. I do have one thing that I'd like to bring up before we go to our closing, and that came out of the last session. There was a question that came up about how do you scale up regenerative practices to a level where it can feed the world. And I thought that Kelsey Scott and Enrique Salmon had fantastic answers. And it was really, let's not put that pressure on farmers and ranchers. We have enough pressure already. Let's think about our role as humans in how to revitalize ag systems and food distribution systems, and including handling food waste or reducing it, and then handling what's there so that people can feed themselves. You know, this comes back to people. We talk about soil and we talk about water, but it is about people. It's about nature, and how we bring this all together. And I just wondered if the rest of the team, if we went through our team internally and answered that, then we could go to Alejandro, and then with final remarks and on to Mike. So Linda, coffee, what do you think about revitalizing ag systems and getting regenerative agriculture so So it's the norm. It's not the exception, you know, it's what everybody's doing instead of just the weirdos.
I think that's very exciting. And I love that you brought out there's so much more to it, this feeding thing, the food waste. I'm very worried. Lee mentioned American Farmland Trust. I'm very worried about the loss of farmland. We definitely need to do a better job with the soil that we have left, because in addition to erosion and all the losses we're seeing that way, we're losing an awful lot to concrete. And so I feel like the time is now. The time is right. I'm excited to hear young people being interested in this. And it is a bigger picture than just what the farmer himself can do, but we all have to do our part. Yeah, I love that. I love what you said there.
Lee, how about you?
So I've been reading some articles and books on traditional ecological knowledge, indigenous knowledge. And one of the themes that keeps coming across is this idea that we're not separate from nature. Now that seems kind of intuitive. We kind of know that we're part of this local ecology, but it comes out, especially in our Western, perspective. As a white man in America in this industrial society, it's like we think that we need to fix the land. We think we need to heal the land, right? But from what I've read of the traditional ecological perspective is that is packed with a lot of hubris to think that you could impact that, right? The best, since you are actually a part of the ecology, the best way to impact the land is to take care of the whole community, and that is taking care of yourselves and your people. And by starting with taking care of your people, and your community, the land is a part of that, right? So we start thinking, empathetically, right? And taking care of ourselves and taking care of our people like we should. I think that's the starting point for a truly regenerative society, which will impact the land too, because it's a part of us. I mean, we always say that we are part of the land, but it's a part of us too. So.
Wow, well said. So I'll just, you guys have done such a great job of covering the heart end of things. I guess I'll go back and do the uncommon thing for me, which is think about the science or the mind side of this. And that's, in order to get regenerative ag up into where it is the powerful force for good that we need it to be. Part of this is understanding how to build those relationships and how to carry the messages. How do people learn and how do we influence them? And we are grateful to Southern SARE and to NRCS for funding some of the grants that we have and our private funders that help us look into this. That is a type of partnership that we would be really excited about. I haven't talked very much about what we're doing in Montana, but one of our really exciting partnership projects that is just getting started is we have a conservation innovation grant through NRCS that we are a partner to the Pecan Lodge Health Institute, which is the Blackfeet Nation working on regenerative grazing on the Blackfeet tribal lands. And it's really exciting. Uh-oh, we got Alejandro leaving. Do you have one more minute, Alejandro? I'll shut up. I might have lost him.
Yes, I do. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. We'll let you do your concluding remarks, and I just wanted to get it out there that we are excited about working with the Pecan Lodge, and I'll leave it there, and I'll just go back for closing remarks with Alejandro and
No, I'm
Mike.
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Linda.
Nope, it's all good.
Yeah, no, that reminds me that I have two kinds of neighbors, the ones that think that I'm crazy and the ones that know that I'm crazy. And I'm pretty excited, that to have more crazy people on the board. I'm excited to hear that 40% of people attending here is practicing some regenerative practices. And that actually happened where we are. I mean, the beginning, it was very difficult. It was these crazy people just trying to do something. And now people are much more comfortable by looking at some other properties or some other friends. And so I think it's going to be just a matter of time for things to just settle down, and for people who are not really, or farmers, ranchers, being more the voice of the producers, that they will be more willing to do it, or even their son or the daughter. But definitely, I agree with you folks that we need to involve the consumer. It's going to be very important when he starts demanding products with more nutrients and fewer chemicals, corporations as well, and the whole community, ranchers and farmers. But I'm excited as you are. I understand, Linda, that, yeah.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. Appreciate it. Mike, would you like to close this out?
Sure. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. A special thanks, Alejandro. We're really grateful that you were able to join us. Thank you, Linda, both Lindas, and Lee and Felicia, who's not here anymore. I did think of one other thing we haven't mentioned, which is we are looking for stories. We have a way for you to put your story up on our map if you're welcome to do that. But we are also we want to meet people and hear about remarkable innovators that you know about, and we will be writing up those stories, trying to collect good photographs and really tell them in a way that's deep and detailed enough to be useful to other producers. So if you know of a good person or organization that is doing something great, please let us know. We would like to begin collecting those and seeking them out. Really, beyond that, I just would like to thank you all very much for participating in this session, letting us tell you about our project, meeting a few of our team members. Please go to our website, soilforwater.org. Check out the forum, join the network, plant your flag on the map, on the atlas, attend our educational events, sign up for our newsletter. We'll keep you informed. And do let us know about your own effort, and let's talk about how we can collaborate and work together. If we didn't get to questions you put in the Q&A box, either here or earlier in the conference, again, we will try to get back to you, and you can still type them in there in the remaining time of the conference here. When we do close, and well, let me explain that. We will be, now our Executive Director, Steve Thompson, will be making a few remarks in the conference. My understanding is you do not need to leave and come back. You can just stay tuned, and Steve will be joining us very shortly. You can leave if you want, and then get back into the agenda and click on the button for his closing remarks. But whenever you do leave our session, please do give us your feedback, comments on the session. Click the little button that says rate the session, and that's very helpful to us in knowing how we did and how we can improve. So I think with that, I'll just thank you all. There's Steve, and we really appreciate your time and look forward to hearing from all of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks to everybody on the Soil for Water team. My final role is to close the conference ahead of schedule with just a few closing remarks. I heard a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy the last couple of days, and hope is really the thread that weaves through all of the sessions for the last couple of days. We're fortunate to have shared so much hope this week. Alejandro Carrillo noted how critical a message of hope is. So many people say they don't have any hope. I salute Kelsey Scott from the Intertribal Agriculture Council for her work with the Native Youth Food Sovereignty Alliance, which she told us about today. The hope I've been hearing is a clear-eyed hope. It is not a hope that skates by reality. I heard plenty of recognition of the challenges that we're facing. Economic challenges facing farmers and ranchers, the climate crisis, and increasingly crazy weather patterns. A many decades long legacy of soil degradation, water contamination, disrupted water cycles, and yet hope persists. The hope I heard this week has been inspired by success stories, a hope motivated by people coming together to create solutions and to share knowledge and wisdom. The other theme that I heard loud and clear is responsibility. As we heard from Kelsey and Enrique in the session earlier today, being a steward of the land is more a matter of responsibility than of rights. We have a responsibility to work with nature rather than the right to squeeze everything we can from the land, from the water, and from the soil. I want to share a couple quotes about hope and responsibility and the power we hold to regenerate the world. David Montgomery says, on a big scale, I think what we need is a philosophical change on how we look at the soil as a foundation of agriculture and therefore civilizations. We need to embrace the idea that rebuilding soil biology and soil health really are the foundations for the future of farming and human life on Earth. Wendell Berry said the same thing in a different way. The care of the earth is our most ancient and most worthy, and after all, our most pleasing responsibility. To cherish what remains of it and to foster its renewal is our only hope.